hiring level, are these spaces that understand
women have Public health is a field dedicated to protecting and improving the health of all people. For too long, women have been underrepresented in leadership positions within the health sector, but that is all about to change. The Women in Leadership Project, a collaboration between the African Population and Health Research Centre, Global Health 50/50 UK, and the International Centre for Research on Women, India, is breaking down barriers and empowering women to take their rightful place at the wheel.
We've been hearing a lot about how within the health sector, a lot of the work is being done by grassroots women, but there are very few in leadership positions. So we wanted to understand what is it and why is it that women are not in leadership positions.
From a lack of mentorship to unconscious bias, women face hurdles in attaining leadership roles in the health sector.
So I think there's probably barriers and challenges at several levels, including the lack of legal protection, the lack of organisational policies, but also at the level of what happens in their homes, what happens in the domestic sphere. So all of the evidence that we have shows that women have pretty good equality in the workplace in many countries, up until the point at which they have children. And once they have children, their ability to progress their careers in the workplace really declines. So for me, one of the biggest challenges that we need to address is the lack of equality in the domestic sphere.
But progress is being made. Organizations like Global Health 50/50 are implementing strategies to bridge the gap.
So the entire purpose of Global Health 50/50 is really about promoting equality of opportunity for everybody working inside global health organizations, as well as equality of opportunity for people benefiting from the activities of those organizations. So we're an accountability and monitoring mechanism that provides data that people inside organizations can use to push for change towards equality and social justice inside their organizations and in terms of what their organizations deliver.
Through in-depth research and insightful interviews, the Women in Leadership Project is shedding light on these obstacles.
While I can speak about specific barriers and enablers in the health sector, hearing from women from different sectors, we've learned that some of these barriers and enablers are common across sectors. So it's not just about the health sector. So if you talk about some key barriers, I think we have to talk about organizational culture. How masculine are these spaces, right? Are there spaces where women are heard? Firstly, are there spaces where women are hired? What are the biases at the hiring level? Are these spaces that understand women's lived realities? The fact that women, when they get married, are expected to provide care work, right? Women, when they have children, have to provide care work. Women, when they have elderly parents, have to provide care work. Do organizations...
Please sit. Yeah, Dr. Lorraine. Yeah. Anyway, now I'm gonna. Who comes from? Put people on the spot now. Itakuwa mwalimu kichezea fimbo. Who comes from government? We have you. We were talking, you and me, and I know. So please. Please. That's the beauty of having conversation, and then now I know who is who. All right, let's get someone from the research sector. Sylvia, and then we have Strathmore. Where are you? Kipra is here. Oh, yes, please, Kipra. Please come forward. Unfortunately, Rose is not here, so I don't know if you prefer me to call you Rose. I'll be offending you, but thank you very much for coming forward. Okay, so we have Kipra. Anyone from the funder who can pretend to be a funder? Gladys, I know you are there. You are a funder. It's simple conversation. All right. Let's see. My brother from Strathmore, you're not off the hook. Please come forward. Yeah, you know you are. You know yourself. Okay. Let's get Sylvia, of course. You have to, you are the last one. Yeah? So at least it's not Manel, because they usually say if it's only men on the panel, it's Manel. So if only women, how do we call it? Huh? It's a panel. Anyway, I don't know. I don't want to start a conversation. Eh? If it's only men on the panel, it's Manel. All right. Before we start, and I want to make sure the audience is engaged, before we start with our panels, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourselves, and then we'll start the conversation. How do I reduce volume here? Yes. I would like to ask the audience, and I would like to get a few hands to volunteer, because this is not them talking, it's us talking and engaging, right? That's the whole point of panel. It's not them talking, it's also you, the audience, contributing, okay? So yesterday we have had lots of conversations about women leaders in health. I talked about more broadly in Africa. I want to get a few hands. In one word, what comes to your mind when someone says women leaders in health sector in Kenya? In one word. I want to hear the men. Let's see if they've captured the conversation. What comes into your mind in one word when we are talking about women leaders in health sector in Kenya? Where are the men? I will point at you if you don't volunteer. So it's your choice. Those who have not spoken today, Chris, can you point one? Yes. Who have never said anything. In one word, when you hear women health leaders, women leaders in health sector in Kenya, what word comes to your mind? Men, don't pretend you're busy. I can watch you. I see you. I'll start with you. In one word, what do you make of that? I will gladly do so. In one word. You've been here yesterday and today. In one word. When we say women in health, leaders, whatever in Kenya, what one word sticks to you? And don't use my words, please. Inclusion, okay? So when we're talking about women leaders in health sector in Kenya, one key word is inclusion. Let's see another. Let's see if we can get a pattern. Another man to volunteer? People hiding their faces. Another man to volunteer? Where are they? This is the time when you hold not the sharpen, the other end. Where are they? Which table has many men? Okay, let's go table by table. So there's inclusion here. There's one there, my brother. You're seeing, you can see me. I know. One word. Equality. Inclusion, equality. Here. You are repeating. You don't have to repeat what you say. Equity. Okay. Inclusion, equality, equity. That sounds like a cliche. It's a pattern. What about that table? There are so many voices there. One word. That's two. You're disqualified. One. You can't say balance. Balance what? Eh? Ben and Amamadou, what one word would you say? Intentionality. Inclusion, we had inclusion, equality, equity, intentionality. Ben, the last one? Oh, your boss has already said it. You want to go again? No, you can't have twice. There's a man here. He had just arrived. There are two here, actually. I forgot. When we speak of women in health, leaders, women leaders in health or in health sector in Kenya, what one word comes to mind? One word. Professionalism. Professionalism. What did he say, if people remember? No, that guy. Inclusion, equality, equity, intentionality. Do you see the pattern? Does it, ladies, do you think men seem to understand women inclusion in health sector leadership in Kenya? Or it's just propaganda too because we are here? All right, let's get back to the panelists. I was making sure that they are awake, so when you speak, they will be able to follow. All right, thank you very much, panelists. So I'm going to give you half a minute each. I don't want to say who is who, but half a minute to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and one word that you have taken away so far.
Good afternoon. Kennedy Love is my name, Strathmore University. I am a project coordinator and research officer under a project by the name Driving Country Level Change Project. We are working in collaboration with the Kenya Healthcare Federation. And what I take from this is there are very different interpretation of gender. So I think it will be interesting to hear from the industry experts.
Different interpretations of gender. Okay? Pass it on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. George Lutomia from KIPRA. I'm a research mentor. Allow me to mention something about gender. KIPRA has just completed its book, Engendered Approach to Unlocking the Potential for Sustainable Development. And in chapter 4, it is actually a 460-page book, 16 chapters. It will be launched on 8th March 2025 because of the Women's Day, so it has to coincide on that with that day. But the most important thing on gender, we are touching on towards closing the gender gap. And in that chapter, we are mentioning that actually the only enemy of a second.
I asked for half a minute introduction. We'll come to that.
Okay, last week I launched my book, Managing Security and Safety in Learning Institutions, a guide and counseling perspective. I'll want also you can look at it once you have time. Thank you for taking more.
Thank you, Dr. George. Before Prof comes in, I hope we have a bulletproof here. Because he said a very provocative word. The enemy of women is what? That was very heavy. My friend, you and me with a tie. But anyway, we are safe, right? It's a safe space to speak. Prof, over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Eunice Ndirango Mugo. I am Professor and Dean at the Aga Khan University School of Nursing and Midwifery that cuts across East Africa, so I'm in charge of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. I'm also the chair of the Nursing Council of Kenya Board, which is a regulatory body for nurses and midwives, and we know we have more women in nursing than men. And finally, I sit in the One Girl Can Philanthropist Board, which is an organization that seeks to support young girls to get access to education. It is a pleasure to be here. The one word I can think about when we're talking about gender is voice.
Voice. Huh? Yeah, voice. And coming from a woman. My brother, yesterday you were saying, this 2/3 rule. I paid attention to your statement. You said 2/3 rule, and then people go and vote. How can I draft it? All right, we'll come to that. Over to you. Half a minute. You know, men tend to talk a lot.
My name is Mr. Martin Pepela. I'm an assistant director in charge of legislative drafting and review at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. What I've taken out from this meeting so far is we still have a long way to go. That's what I can say for now.
And research does support that it will take 142 years for gender parity to be achieved. Okay? So you are very right on track. Our very own Sylvia.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'm Sylvia Moyingo, and I've led the team that has generated the evidence for women in leadership in the health sector, together with the partnership that we had with Global Health 50/50 and ICRW. So in terms of the takeaway, or not takeaway.
One word.
One word.
We will come to the takeaway. There will be another quiz for you guys. Don't worry.
Okay. My one word is stewardship.
Stewardship. Voice stewardship. So you see the difference here. You see what the women are saying, and what the men are saying. Are you seeing the pattern? Stewardship, voice. Men are using a bit intentionality. It's a bit unclear. What do you mean intentionality? Use equate. What do you mean? Stewardship. We want voice. The women are saying they want voice. All right. Dr. George, you seemed to really get it on. So now let's get to you now. We will start off with you. And I want to shoot you with, since you started talking about women and the report, chapter, 400 pages. All right. Let's talk about police and gender. And since you're doing this report, it seems to me you're ready to unpack a lot of policy issues, especially the influence of policy on gender and gender equity. How can public policy in Kenya better support women's career progression in the health sector, especially regarding the work-life balance and care responsibilities, in your opinion? If you could do in 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. As you are all aware, KIPRA, our main work is drafting policies and research, and to just bring on board women in career, we have just drafted our policy on STEM education in Kenya and how women have been disadvantaged. So our proposal has already won a 14 million grant from Southern Voices to now bring up a policy on STEM.
$14 million.
Yeah, yes, dollars.
Okay.
Yes, dollars. On STEM, we are encouraging now, since 2016, when STEM education was started in Kenya, it has advantaged men. But now we are bringing on board women to take that so that they also take the science-oriented courses that will lead them to liberation in science areas other than just the social aspects that they are doing. So KIPRA is already ahead on that, besides the book that we are putting across for all the other people to read and maybe get that information that will let them maybe get that issue of the 50-50 that they so much wish. But remember, we are saying that the country also has been very good with policies. The policies are already there. It's only that the implementation has been slow. But the main people who are actually making us to not move as fast as possible are women themselves. The key is just start at the legislature. Vote in women, they change, and everything will work. But women are saying we don't want to be led by a woman. We want a woman, and as we follow. That's where the problem is.
Are you sure you want to go home safe today? You are provoking.
Well, what I'm talking about is now called truth.
Truth. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. I know my brother is laughing, so I'm going to come to you. First, do you agree with what he's saying? In your opinion? It's conversation. We are talking. What do you think? That implementation is slow because the enemy is women?
I don't think there's an enemy. There is the law of the Republic of Kenya recognizes freedom of choice. And the freedom of choice when it comes to leadership is made in terms of political leadership, for example. It is done through a vote. And this vote is through me as a candidate convincing the population, and the population voting in the manner that it deems fit So the outcome of an election should be respected regardless of which gender has taken the leadership.
Thank you. You can pause right there before you contradict yourself. Let's. Is there a woman on the audience who's banning on what has been said so far? You're like, this one I have to speak right now. Is there anyone? So they're on track. Let's hear from the Prof. What do you think? What is your reflection on the two? Because you're sandwiched between two men.
I'm safe. At one point, I thought I would be the only woman in the panels. I was very happy when she came up as well. I honestly really do struggle with the statement that women are their worst enemies. And I'll speak from my own experience. I believe some of the best champions I have had to get me to where I am today have been women. I also know some of the best champions to get me where I am have also been men. So for me, in terms of encouragement, in terms of opening the way for me, and in terms of being a barrier, they have been both genders. I don't necessarily think that there is a bias towards it that women are an enemy, as the term has been used. But here's the thing. We also have to ask ourselves, what is the critical mass of women who are very highly placed that we are dealing with? Because the more you have a critical mass, the higher the chances that the person you meet who opens a door for you will be a woman. But chances are you walked into that office, you got into that role, and you have a long list of men who are leading in various levels. And maybe you're somewhere here in the bottom. So I think that's the reality as it stands. However, we also have to ask ourselves, what are the challenges that that woman in leadership has to deal with on a daily basis that they spend 2 seconds to think about the next woman sitting next to them or even the man next to them? Sometimes, almost none.
Right there. I will stop you right there. I know people want to clap. Yeah. But Dr. George was talking from research. So if you're not clapping for him, then you're saying his research is what? He was not saying it by himself. Right, Doctor? I'm trying to defend you. You're my guy. Yeah? Sylvia, your quick 30-second thoughts on this before we jump to something else.
Yeah, I think from what he said, I would have asked him to unpack what he really means by, women are their worst enemies in terms of progression.
So ball has come back to you, Doc.
Yeah.
Unpack that in a minute. Yeah, you have a chance to redeem yourself.
Just maybe to mention on the political arena, most of the most honest voters are women. And I've seen in most cases, I'm also in politics. I've been the CEC Education Kakamega. I'm also in politics, and whenever we could want to champion a lady to become a governor, women would come up and say, no, not a woman now. The number two, I sometimes take my wife to the salon. And she tells me the man who does it is not in her son funeral.
She's listening to this live.
The man who makes my hair well or nails is not in. Let us wait until he comes back. And there are many ladies there who can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. My friend, you want to sleep on the couch tonight, I suppose. All right, I think this has started off the conversation, right? And thank you, Dr. George, for such a controversial statement, which I think has made everyone awake. Now, let's go back now to the research, because now we go back to what we wanted to do. So, and now I want to start off with Sylvia, and then I'll come to Strathmore, and then Dr. George, in that order. Same question, okay? What role does research play in shaping policies that address the dual burden of paid employment and unpaid domestic labor for women in the health sector? Let me repeat. What role does research play in shaping policies that address the dual burden of paid employment and unpaid domestic labor for women in the health sector? 2 minutes. I'm a very strict moderator. 2 minutes. I'll start with Sylvia, because you've done this research, so this is your comfort zone. And then while you're talking, others are digesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I hope I got it all right. So what role does research play in shaping policies around unpaid care work.
Paid employment and unpaid domestic labor for women in the health sector.
Paid employment and
unpaid.
And unpaid.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of the research, or based on the experience we've had, so research, first of all, helps us understand the challenges that women, both whether it's within paid work or unpaid work, experience. So in understanding the work that the challenges that exist, then we can identify potential solutions or what works in that sense. So in terms of generating either deeper understanding of the issues at hand with within, let's say, quantitatively, so quantitatively identifying those issues, knowing if they work or if they don't work, and what are the potential solutions, and how do we address the evidence and also evaluate the evidence. So most of the time we have, let's say, when we started out, there was a lot of talk around women in leadership, particularly. But there's also issues around unpaid care work and issues within paid employment. But because it was just talk, we needed the numbers. We needed the evidence to generate the evidence to show for it that actually this representation is important, and also show what impact it could have if we did things right, or if things were going right, what impact that would have for both paid work and unpaid care work. And if paid care work was a challenge, unpaid care work was a big challenge, how do we address it? And what are the potential solutions in our context? So contextualizing that evidence is also a big part of research.
Thank you. My brother from Strathmore.
Thank you. I think based on the research you did, I might not speak as an industry expert, but based on the research and also conversations, research evidence allows, especially in our case, to just understand the landscape. And I think Dr. Sylvia has really tried to bring it out. Because when we dived into this, we didn't have an understanding of how these issues are within the healthcare sector. So there were issues on equal pay, what are the inequalities, what are the disadvantages. We also came to understand in terms of the unpaid domestic work. And there was some conversations that used to come up in terms of if women are advocating, or we are advocating for 100% participation of women at the workplace, then what percentage is left for participation at home? So those are the things that evidence has really tried to bring out.
Assuming women are meant to be home.
Assuming. I'm just trying to bring it out because you can...
I'm just pulling your leg. Yeah. Go ahead.
You can have as much participation at one place, so in terms of that balance. And also it brought out what are the sources of these issues. Are they societal, individual, organizational? And for us, we were mostly focused on the organization. So we looked at the policies. These policies, we also discovered that it depends on the context of the organization. Because if you look at small-sized organization, the level of policy adoption and implementation might vary from a big organization. So it helps you to understand what are the policy interventions can I do at the different levels. So I think that is the
fantastic. Thank
use
you.
of evidence.
Let's hear. Is it the same view from Kipra?
Yes, and I just want to maybe add one or two things. One, we have to understand that research usually is empirical. And being empirical, it will actually give accurate data if it's done well to inform policy on how it should be and what it should address. So once that has been done, it gives the right direction to what is supposed to be done in an organization or maybe to create solution that will also be authentic in nature. So when we are looking at maybe unpaid care workers, or maybe irrational payments to different gender, we look at maybe what is the importance of what we are maybe researching on, and then get to see the importance of the workers and the policy that should come out of that. But what makes maybe also some of those imbalances, as it has been said, sometimes there are those stereotypes at the workplace, including exclusion of the mother's room, which makes them maybe to eventually not to hold high other positions, especially when they are now nursing the children. However, what we need to look at as we do research to inform policy is that it has to be empirical and data has to be right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the practitioner. You know, now the four of the panelists here are researchers. Are you buying, Martin? Are you buying to what they're telling us? From your police side, from your practitioner side of the story?
From a practitioner's side, I want to agree that research is very important. And in recent past, as drafters, we have been lambasted, basically, let me say, academically beaten by the very learned people in parliament, very learned people in various ministries, to prove what we are trying to legislate. And the proving has compelled us to now, make sure that we have research conducted, data presented, and arguably convincing to these legislators and to the policymakers.
So if I may interject, so you're suggesting that you as a policymaker, you are now appreciating the role of evidence.
Yes, actually.
Robust evidence.
Exactly. Evidence-based research, which can assist us now to convince anyone, including a person down in the village, that what we are doing is correct.
Can you look at the audience and tell your colleagues who are practitioners in a very convincing voice that we need to believe in evidence? Can you tell them?
Okay. I was speaking to you, so let me speak to let me speak to my colleagues here. That research is very informative. If you get a very good researcher and the outcome of a research process that has clear methodology that has been, like the one you did, we as drafters, we as policymakers can now craft one of the best legislation from it. Even if it's 100 pages, we can get 2 lines that can now be convincing to the public. Can I give you an example?
Go ahead. Shoot yourself.
I shoot myself. Now, we had a situation in this country of cash transfers. I'm sure it rings a bell. It had no legislation. So the money has been, we have been dishing out 2000s without any legislation. But now the question in Parliament was, how many people are benefiting? How many people are above 70? And why do you say above 70, yet the Constitution says 60 for older person? Why do you say extreme disability when a disability is supposed to be defined as a disability? So we had to conduct a research. And the professor who was seated here was one of the good researchers from the University of Nairobi. And they came up with a very good, convincing finding, which now we converted into what we call as an issue paper. So the issue paper was presented before the ministry. And the ministry had never done it before. So they were convinced. And eventually we were again asked to present before the Committee on Labour and Social Welfare in Parliament. They were also convinced. And they now sanctioned that you can proceed to create a legislation to now ensure that cash transfer is anchored in a piece of legislation. But before we could do that, the finance people came. Now Kipra here and Tim, and said, if we put in place as of right, and we put in place numbers such as, we talk about youth, they are also vulnerable. How many youth do we have in the country? So the research of KNBS also helped us. KNBS said we have close to 27 million youth in the country. And out of the 27 million youth, close to 22 are unemployed. So if they are to get 2,000 bob per person per month, will the country's economy be running on welfare? So again, we had to bring in a sociologist. There were so many people involved. But at the end of the day, we were able now to say, no, let us cap cash transfer on older persons at 60 and unpensionable. Unpensionable, meaning you have no pension, and it's for food, not for any other activity. And then that led us now to social health.
Thank you very much.
So it's a big, research is very key for us.
Who has not been convinced they have their own problems? I think he has made a very compelling case, right? All right, I know, Prof, you're burning. I'll give you 1 minute to say something, because I know you're a researcher too. You want to say something?
Yeah, I wear both hats. So evidence for decision making is a fact. It is what we should be doing on a daily basis. And I think for me, both as a researcher, an educator, and a health practitioner, from where I stand, I think we are getting to that point where we are engaging more and more in research and producing evidence that is very contextualized to us. I think the gap then we face is, with what we know from this context, how do we then test interventions that would work for us, that are very responsive to dealing with the issues we have at hand? So for instance, if it's the issue of gender and women in leadership, health in the healthcare space, what interventions can we try out from a research evidence perspective to see what works and what doesn't work, so that then we are able to scale those up in a practical way to solve our own gender inequality in health leadership. That's what I would say. The second thing to point out, the findings that have been discussed really speak to even what we see, even as educators. I come from, I'm a nurse, so nursing is largely a female-dominated field. If you look at the state of nursing report and the state of midwifery report that was done by WHO, IC, and ICM, it says the same thing. Because nursing is largely a women-dominated field, the pay is less, it's not equal pay for equal work. There are less women in leadership in nursing, although we are 70%, in some countries it's even 90% women. And most importantly, there is no empowerment for the profession, largely because there's a gendered lens that is adapted. So I see how the findings that are being discussed today reflect very much in a field such as mine that is very, very highly female-dominated. Thank you.
Okay, hold the mic. I'm still with you. You have opened the can of worms, so it's coming. Now, you are coming from Aga Khan, and are you sure you're not an activist? You come across as one, very passionate one, and it's a good thing. So maybe we can go deeper from what you've just said with what you do at Aga Khan. How does your institution contribute to breaking down the gender barriers in the health sector? That's one. And are there specific initiatives that you have implemented or plan to implement to support women in leadership roles?
Sure. So the Aga Khan University has been in East Africa for the last 23 years. We started in Uganda, and I'm talking about the School of Nursing in this case, in the year 2000, Kenya and Tanzania in the year 2001. When we started, the focus was in providing opportunities for nurses who have done a diploma, who want to do a degree, and so on, giving opportunities for them to advance their studies. And there were three realities to that. One, nurses earn less. Remember, I'm talking about nurses is largely 70+% of women. So they don't earn as much. Quality education costs. Two, you're talking about women who may not have the luxury to stop working to come and study full-time because they want an advanced qualification, because like we said, as has been said, they're mothers, they're getting married, they're getting babies, they're doing all. So if you take them away from that, they will never choose an education as an option. Number 3 was a question of access and affordability. So those 3 things have been the driving force for what we do. So we have huge, amazing partners and stakeholders who support us. So through people like Johnson & Johnson Foundation, KFW, ELMA, and others. So we're able to provide scholarship support for our students. And so the guiding force becomes, do you meet the criteria to study? And that becomes it. Then you apply for scholarship based on your needs. The other thing we've also been able to do is thinking about the curriculum. You know, when you teach, you come to class, you're taught, even if you go to a leadership and management class, that doesn't really doesn't give you a gender edge, doesn't give you opportunity to be an equal partner in the field if you're going to but go for the same positions, right? And so one of the things we realize, and we are very keen on even as we teach, is how do we build those other skills? How do you make your student, who's most likely 70 or 80% a lady, know how to communicate better? How can they go and stand in front of a crowd and make a case for themselves? How are they going to be able to sit back and write a case for them? How are they going to put a paper forward and put an argument forward? Those are the things that are never in an education program. And those are the things we really, really emphasize on in our program. And it's always nice for me to see, we had an alumni event recently, and we had this amazing alumni who presented about a project she's doing in the community to help women deal with psychological challenges during pregnancy and post-delivery. She did not need money extra to do that, but she was innovative enough to see this is a problem. How can I lead in solving that problem? So for us as educators, leadership is not for you to wait to be the unit manager. You might have to wait for 20 years for the person to die, retire, or get sick and incapacitated, right? But you can lead where you are. And for me, that's what leadership is about.
You can lead where you are. We are leaders in our own spaces. You are still not off the hook. You have opened a can of worms. So now you're training these young ladies, young nurses who are very aspirational, who wants to achieve this and that. They want to go to the community. How are you able to integrate gender equality principles in their mind? How do you infuse that? And what challenges have you faced so far?
I think the starting point in terms of challenges is when you get a class of, let me use 30 is an easier number to use, of 20 women and 10 men. On the first day of class, ask who is going to be the class representative. Trust me, rarely will the 20 ladies among them, someone go like, let me be it.
If you're in that group,
you will be
the one to raise the hand. I'm pretty sure.
Most likely. But that aside, so that's the first challenge. The fact that when people come to a space, women are usually generally the ones who first try to think, do I meet the criteria? Don't I meet the criteria? And so on. Even when we put up things for application, like for students, awards or something, a man who knows he does not meet the criteria will apply a good one. A lady whom you know meets the criteria and exits, they won't do it. They'll first sit back. So those are the first distinctions you see that when you come into a classroom day one. And so for us, the idea has been, how do we get our ladies to get out of that space of always thinking twice before going on for something? So that starts to be the starting point. The others are practical things. Sometimes they'll need flexible hours even to study. You have to be a lot more understanding because they will get babies. They will want a place to express their milk. So we've had to create a space for the women to come and express milk and store milk. They will want maternity leave. We do not want them to discontinue their studies on account of the fact that they went to have babies. They will also be the one who will have to go home and cook at night and then come back the following day to cook. That is a reality of what a female has to face on a daily basis that already distinguishes them from the counterpart classmate who's a man. You may not be able to solve all those problems, but we are able to provide support system for them, whether it's psychosocial support that is free offered, whether it is faculty advisors, listening to other women talk about their journeys and how they've been able to navigate them, providing them with mentorship opportunities. Like I said, it does not solve all the problems, but it gives them a better platform and support system for them to do the best they can in that space. And we've seen them, go on and do great things.
Thank you. Sylvia, I'm coming to you. So process, we'll talk about it from your research perspective, but I want to talk to these three gentlemen. I believe you have daughters, don't you? You have sons, but let's assume There's nothing wrong with it. Martin, do you have a daughter?
Yes.
You do have a daughter?
Yes.
George, Dr. George, we are going to give you a daughter. Let's assume you have a daughter, a hypothetical daughter, okay? My brother here, you have 2 daughters. Fantastic. From what she said, that there are those young nurses in class who have their self-doubts, they don't know, they know they're qualified, but they can't raise their hands. Assume they are your daughters. What would you tell them to empower them? One sentence.
One sentence.
Yes.
I will first empower her as a father to believe that she's like me and not any different from anyone else in the family. And because I believe I'm confident, she will borrow a leaf from me.
That's one sentence.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. George, you don't have to repeat what he said. You have to come up with your own sentence. What would you tell your imaginary daughter who is bullied, who doesn't have self-confidence, she has what it takes, but you want to empower her? What would you tell her?
Not I'm going to be. My last born is 32 years old,
Oh, so you
and all of them are married.
Do you have a granddaughter?
Not a granddaughter. Okay, strangely, they also have 3 sons.
Anyway, let's go with your imaginary.
Okay.
Let's go with the imaginary daughter.
So
my friend.
I would encourage her to be a very good communicator to gain confidence.
Good communicator to gain confidence.
Yes.
Your daughters, what would you tell them who they are lagging behind, they can't raise their hands? What would you tell them?
I think I will make them aware, and I always make them aware that life rewards you for the effort you put in, regardless of what gender you are.
Life rewards you for the effort you put in, regardless of what gender you are. Sylvia.
Yes.
Now that's enough. Sylvia, tell us in your research world. So Prof was talking of male dominance and perception around I'm superior than you. That's why even if I'm not qualified, I'll raise my hand. You work at HRC, you're working with junior researchers. You are a lady. And you know, researchers, how egoistic we can be sometimes. How do you encourage those young researchers in the health space that you work with to believe in themselves?
Yeah, that's that's a question. So regardless of the gender.
The Sylvia, these ones, the young ones, who are looking at you as their leader, but they also have the Henry and the others who have been, sometimes they step on them.
Yeah, so both. Yeah, so regardless, I think regardless of the gender, first you have to believe in yourself, first and foremost. And then one thing I say to most of the junior researchers, on top of believing in yourself, you have to show for what you can do. So you have to be out there to show the impact that you could have. Because if you don't, no one will see it and no one will come up and tell you, you did this thing very well. And the thing is to be honest with many of them. When you can't do something, it's okay not to be able to do something, and to also focus on what you do really well. So that's...
I've given you 10 sentences. You're supposed to say 1. So now, before I transition to another subject, I want to, because I don't want the audience to sleep, I think we still have a little bit of time. I want to take 2 or 3 questions for the panelists. You don't want to give comment. I want questions, burning questions. Anyone with questions so far? Let's get to hear the comment, then we'll come back to you.
Okay, thanks for the chance. My name is Brenda Akoth from the University of Nairobi African Women Studies Center. I'm here to represent Professor Wanjiku Kabira. Yes. So I wanted to actually add on the point that Dr. Sylvia was saying, and my point is that how do we help these ladies these young girls to believe in themselves and even raise their esteem? Because I think the issue here is self-esteem. They are not able to speak for themselves. So as a senior person, maybe stepping in as a mentor, how do you ensure that they are able to speak their mind? I think one thing as a senior person is just to affirm whatever they do. Tell them that you've done it very well. Then they will believe in themselves. They will know that kumbe I can also do it. Yeah. Then next time they will even do it even much better. Yes. So I think the issue of I think affirmation when they do anything is very, very important. Even to your daughters, when they do something, they might not do it very well to your satisfaction, but just affirming them and telling them that you're the best, you've done it well, it will boost their esteem.
Boost their esteem, affirm them. Okay, fantastic. Anyone else? 30 seconds. We need to be less is more, they say. If you don't know what you're saying.
Thanks.
30 seconds.
Thanks. This goes to Martin. Thanks, Martin. You're a policy practitioner, and you were talking about freedom of choice. But my question is, why are women given freedom of choice, yet they still majorly choose men, majorly?
I'm not sure whether you can get into a woman's mind to answer that, but that's your problem. I can't help you.
I was once, I saw a meme which said how to understand a woman. And it had 1,000 pages, and these 1,000 pages, the book was blank. So maybe I may also say I'm blank. But I will just want to say that hypothetically, my mother really loves me. I believe she loves me more than my father. Because my father was a tyrant. He treated us, the men, like a military barrack. And my mom was always telling us, this is the way to go. This is what you have to do to avoid being, terrorized by this Mr. Pepela, who was also happens to have been my high school teacher. Now you can imagine. So most of us men really adore our mothers. We can kill for them. That is a fact. Any lawyer here will tell you that you can actually get away with murder if you kill a person who has beaten up your mother. Did you know that? But I'm not saying you do that. So sometimes these are societal issues which we have no answers. That when a mother comes and tells fellow mothers, please vote for my son. And most politicians are very good at that. They always appear with their moms when they are campaigning. And maybe that is the game changer. So maybe the ladies who are campaigning should also come up with their fathers and tell, so that the fathers can say, please vote for my daughter. I have faith in her. It's a strategy.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, there's a power of a woman. Yes. There's a power of a woman.
Behind every.
And that's what the politicians exploit to get votes.
Can I make a comment to what you said?
Half a second.
Sure. The role of fathers in empowering and building the self-esteem of their daughters is huge. I can say that for free. I have an amazing dad. My mom was equally amazing. She's late, but fathers really have a role. And it's not just affirmation. It is them teaching you how to communicate the way you would communicate in a space where there are men. So that your first instance of learning how to communicate and asserting yourself is not when you are in the workplace. It should start when you're growing up. So I think that's an opportunity that needs to be explored. Similarly, we need to bring up boys, teaching them. I'm a mother of a son and a mother of 2 girls. Even the boys need to also learn, you know, how you integrate gender in your day-to-day, so that they are also very much aware that they also create the space for the next girl, the one they'll marry, the one they will be in class with, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
I completely agree. I'm a product of one mother, and I turned out to be perfectly fine. You wanted to say something about Kipra. Half a second, half a minute.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. One, I must say that you are aware that Kipra is very much gender sensitive. And I wanted to talk about a program we call YP, Young Professionals. Every year we bring on board 30 young professionals from across the country to learn policy and research. And the beauty with that course is that, yes, we train them, but also pay them. I don't know whether you have ever heard of being trained and again you are paid for accepting to come to be trained. So what we normally do is that we pick 15 young men and 15 young ladies. But now on leadership, as it has been said, ladies normally shy off. So what we have done as an institute is that if this year the president was a man, the following year the president must be a lady.
President of the cohort, you mean?
Of the cohort, mm-hmm. The president of the cohort.
Otherwise you might get into trouble.
The president of the cohort must be female. So we interchange, and the vice president is always the opposite sex. So if one was male, the vice president will be female, and like that and that. And then we also bring in gender balance, and we have 3 directorates. Yes, the ED is a lady, and of these 3 directorates, 2 are headed by females and 1 by male. But the best directorates are those ones that are headed by a female.
Thank you very much. I hope that information is on the website. We can read. Right?
Yes,
okay.
yes. Just click Kipra.
Okay.
Thank you.
Half a minute, please. I want to transition to something else now.
Okay, I think it's a marketing opportunity also. So what do we do as Strathmore in terms of advancing gender balance?
See how sharp Kenyans are now.
Aside from the women in healthcare, we have other women-led initiatives. We have the Women Directors Leadership Program. We have the Sisters Blended Value Program. So we not only championing or advancing the advancement of women in healthcare, we also in the enterprise space, in other spaces, and this gives us a bit of understanding of what could be the specific interventions that could be adopted in terms of now advancing healthcare.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this mic now goes to Martin. I'm going to start off with you.
I haven't said about our commission.
No, I will not allow you to.
No, it's important because many citizens confuse.
You know I'm a Tanzanian, so I know Kenyans have service.
I know you very well. So
all right, I'll give you 15 seconds.
Okay.
Yes.
So the organization I'm representing is called Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Mm-hmm. I'm not representing Kenya Human Rights Commission. You get the difference because I got that confusion when we were out there. Kenya National Commission is a state agency. Kenya Human Rights Commission is an NGO. Yes.
Thank you very much.
So I'm representing a state agency. Yes.
Thank you. So you are the Gava, Sawa.
Not necessarily. We are independent commission.
Okay, Sawa. Now, we are starting off with you. So Sylvia and the team, they've presented lots of findings, interesting, that have sparked a lot of conversation. But the key highlights have been, one of them is lack of accountability mechanisms in many laws. Okay? What strategies can the government employ to ensure that legal provisions for women's rights are effectively implemented and monitored?
Thank you. As a commission, we believe in what we call as our Panther principle, where we believe in participation, accountability, transparency, human dignity, equality, and rule of law. Now let me use the rule of law part. We are supposed to oversight government when it comes to the infusing and the respect, promotion and protection of human rights. These human rights includes gender equality, all rights that appertain to a person within the Republic of Kenya or a citizen of the Republic of Kenya. A person includes Daktari here. He may not be a citizen, but he has rights when he is here as a person. But of course, we have other rights that can only go to citizens, such as he can't vote for us. So we believe that oversight and clear oversight where we have clear structures that enable us to monitor, to document, and to report. And as we report, we follow up for purposes of enforcement of the same. Because the problem that we have in the country is enforcement of recommendations, enforcement of findings. But now this enforcement sometimes is a big challenge because of interested parties, because the person you're trying to say enforce is the one you have found out to have a problem. Funding. Most of the time, funding is one of the biggest challenge for some of these monitoring agencies. A commission such as ours is supposed to monitor, document, and report on fundamental and human rights, both for Parliament, for the presidency, as well as the international treaties that Kenya has ratified. But I will tell you that there is no budget for it. So sometimes we have to sit and rely on social media, rely on friends in civil society, or rely on maybe a goodwill of a ministry that will call on us to say, please check on us on this area maybe of water or environment or health. So because we do not have that muzzle in terms of resources, sometimes we are unable to monitor. So I believe that the best way of guaranteeing monitoring and enforcement of some of the findings that we get should be followed by resources. Yeah?
Now, right there.
Yes.
Suppose you have 60 seconds with President Ruto in an elevator.
In an elevator?
Yes, 60 seconds with Ruto.
Yes.
And you are to plead and ask for one thing that needs to happen. In that case, what would that be? One, not two, one. And why?
Resources and respect for the rule of law.
I said one. You said two. One. That you would need for him to issue a presidential decree. This needs to happen for what you are saying to happen.
Enforcement.
So you would want the president to ensure enforcement even if there's no money.
You know, you don't need money for enforcement because
tell us more about that.
It has an element of rule of law. If you know very well that extrajudicial killing is bad, it's against the law. If you know that gender discrimination...
Your voice went down a bit, but anyway.
This is because I was handling several a few weeks ago. If you know that gender discrimination is wrong in law, you don't need resources, you don't need money, you just need to enforce. Do you need money to know that I am a man?
Well, I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that question.
You're not qualified. Okay. So some of these legislations that we have can be enforced just by respecting what is provided.
Thank you. Sylvia, you are in a room with Museveni. You have to ask one thing. What would you ask from him?
One thing that supports the work or
supports the women and leadership, health. What would you ask? What would you ask? One thing, and why?
Yeah, so if I was in a room with where I could voice
freely, he will not hang you. He will not hang you. Yeah. You just tell Mr. President, I need this for this change to happen. What would it be, and why?
Yeah, so for me, I think it would be around giving women the opportunity to independently make decisions around health.
So you want Museveni to declare that women should be given independence to make decisions.
Yeah.
Prof, what would that be for you? One, you have a chance with with Ruto?
Educate the girl child.
Educate the girl child. Why?
Because by educating the girl child, I can guarantee you'll probably very quickly meet almost your 17 SDGs. No poverty, gender equality, better housing, name it. Even better health. Because when you educate the girl child, when she's pregnant, she will have education, so she'll have access to an income, better outcome at pregnancy, access to care, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. Dr. George, what would that be for you?
I'll encourage.
You are asking from the president, not to encourage the president, you're asking for him to give you something. He has the power to say this is going to happen because George has asked. What would you ask?
I'll ask for STEM education.
STEM education, tell us why.
The reason being that most of the well-paying jobs come through the STEM, the science, technology, and also mathematics, English and mathematics.
What would that be for you? You have 30 seconds with Ruto in an elevator. No askari, no one is pulling you back. He says, young man, tell me, what would you tell Ruto?
I think I will advise...
Not advise, ask.
Ask. All initiatives, government, especially public sector, to be from an evidence-based.
Why is that?
This is in regards to ensuring that whatever actions we take on board all actors. So there's the data from academia and other players, and also there are other data that comes from government agencies that could inform which is the best practices that can be developed.
All right, still hold the mic.
Yes.
You're not off the hook. And this is the question for everyone. Martin talked about funding as a big impediment. We are very lucky this research is funded by Gates Foundation. Most often when we have these panels, everyone is saying funding, 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 funding. And then I say, okay, how much is funding? How much is enough? That's the first question. How much do you think if you get, you'll be able to do a very good work? Number one. But where do you see the role of our own philanthropies, our own ingenuity in giving to support our own work? If we want to empower women in the health sector, should we continue to rely on donors? And if we do so, for how long? Or it should reach a point where we say, now, we have to come in. So how much is how much for funding? Can we, as Kenyans, as Tanzanians, as Africans, also play a role? If yes, how? And if we are to get donors, it can't be indefinitely. So it at some point needs to stop. When can that stop? Let's start with you.
Okay, I think there's never much funding. You always ask for more and more and more. But I think the biggest aspect is to ensure that there's sustainability of every initiative that you come up with. So, like our project, we've been challenged. Okay, after the funding model is done, what next? So it is a matter of now coming up with sustainable measures that can ensure your project outlives the funding. So this also comes into your next question, where now how can we leverage on local philanthropy and funding? We have organizations that support, but the question is usually, what is the intended outcome? I think we usually stick on the activities. I'm going to do X, Y, Z, but we never envision what is the ideal situation that is needed. So I think that clarity to local funding mechanism is very important, and what role are they going to play beyond just giving the financial resources?
Thank you very much. Dr. George, if you could use a couple of minutes.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, actually, we need to start thinking of coming out of external funding, because Kenya has already been declared a middle-level economy. And being a middle-level economy, now it's supposed to run on its own with very minimal support. So what does that mean? It means that internally we have to start dealing with the realistic budgets. And these realistic budgets can also be eventually realized through support, local support, through the human resource and physical resources. For instance, we are now at this hotel. It is owned by a Kenyan. There is no need for him now to charge. They can charge us food, and then they let these other facilities be used. That's also
local philanthropy.
Yes, it's local. So and that will bring in many other people to come and do that, and they'll sell on the other things. Thank you.
I wish the owner of the hotel was here to hear that. Prof?
I think this is an important question, especially for somebody like me as dean. A huge part of my time is spent raising funds for scholarships for my nurses and my students, but also for short courses, because we do not charge for short courses that come through. How much is enough? Just when you think you've got the ballpoint figure, the need increases. I remember when I was doing, the team and I were working on our estimate for scholarship gaps for a new undergraduate direct entry program for 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds from high school. We thought if we can support about 30% at 100%, if I use that as an average, would be okay. Until we got into that class. Because remember I said, it's your ability and brightness that brings you, not your cash. We had kids who didn't even have transport to come for the interview. So the need is increasing by and large. Donor dependence, huge challenge. We have been extremely lucky. We've had donors who've been with us for years and years. But I also find a lot of people who give and are being very, very philanthropic are not like you and me. We get a lot of support from people in other countries, not necessarily funding agencies. And we have countries where it is the norm to give back, and that is something we are lacking. We are trying to get into that space, but we need to get out of the donor mindset. And I even tell my students sometimes, there are other opportunities for you to apply. Even if you go to CDF and you get 2,000, it means you're thinking of someone else other than the Mzungu who is going to bring money through Aga Khan. And I think that's a mentality we need to change. But I do agree with the gentleman here. Sometimes there is more we can give other than cash money. Even giving your time and expertise is something you can do even if you have another full-time paying job. Finally, as political landscape changes, priorities changes, we're also seeing donors who are pulling out of some countries, depending on what laws those countries are putting in place. And I have one country that's really suffered where my students are concerned because of that. So if we grow our own money, we find a way of giving our own money, then we don't have to be at the mercy of what another person outside thinks. It aligns to their abilities and their philosophies and their policies. Thank you.
Martin, you have talked about this. I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay, I have no problem with any funding, generally. I'll be very controversial on that because what I'll be more concerned is the ideology behind the funding. Whether it's coming from India, wherever, as long as the funding is coming to do what is good for the country, good for the society, it doesn't matter. What matters is the ideology behind it. If it's coming to destabilize, if it's coming to mock, to lower my dignity, then that is the bad thing.
So there's no limit on how much?
There's no limit. Okay. There's no limit, yeah. But I also want to to say that as a country like Kenya, including Tanzania,
yes,
we also give a lot out there from our resources here. Because Kenya grows a lot of tea, we grow a lot of coffee and mining, amongst others. And these are investors that are here. And when they take this money, and maybe they bring in form of some, what you call as donation, which the Kenya government refuses to use the word donation, it's just a development partner. So if you are a development partner, you cannot come and say, you're helping me. You're not helping me. We are actually partnering in something. If you say you're helping me, then I may say...
Wait, pass it on to Sylvia. The key takeaway is partnership. Meaningful partnership, right? Yes. Sylvia, what's your take?
So, in terms of how much is enough, I think I want to go back, first of all, because we are always looking for money from outside, from funders outside. So the funders have their priorities. So that's the reality. So you as a country may have your priorities, But until you have created that kind of space in which you can make meaningful demands, because you contribute, you bring money to the table, we'll continue to look at ourselves as waiting for donor money. Then the other thing is, within our grant applications or funding applications, there should always be a sustainability model. So whether it's like here, working with government, or doing something more tangible in terms of sustainability. And this is the sort of the pool that we fall into when we try to develop digital solutions, because we run into the cycle of, because it's not sustainable, then we keep running the same cycle. And in terms of philanthropy, I want to say that we can't continue to look at big organizations. So organizations, let's say industry, have a big role to play because they have the social corporate responsibility. Organizations like Safaricom, they should give back to the communities which they serve. So that's one aspect. But also we as individuals, we should continue to give back to society. Because from perspective of what we all get, whether it's a scholarship, we have an obligation. To whom much is given, much is expected. So if you study on a scholarship, you should give back in some ways to the system. So I want to give an example, because I'm an alumni of the London School. Every year you're obliged to contribute to the students' fee. So students go to school because you provide yearly, and this has gone on for a long period of time. So we as individuals, if you gain from the system, you should give back as an individual. There should be mechanisms in which we support those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we hearing? We should give back, good people, pay forward. Now, before I wrap up, there's one final exercise they're going to do. Is there any burning question? One. Yes.
Yeah, I do have, I had two. One was for you, really. What will you tell Suluhu? But anyway, we can skip that one. One that I wanted to really direct to Prof. Is on the evidence that we're seeing today, and also understanding that you under the Nursing Council in your other hats and responsibility, I really wanted to understand your take on what this evidence means, especially because we know all other cadres, in all other cadres in Kenya, nursing has the highest proportion of women. And then even within nursing itself, there are more women than men. So I wanted to just get to understand what it means for NCK, and yeah, over.
Prof, I'll give you 1 minute. We are way overdue.
That's fine. I think this is one of the areas, if I may be very honest, I feel the profession could have done better. And there is history to it, and I'm not saying that history is good reason why. If you recall, nursing education was largely in colleges attached to hospitals. It was not necessarily historically an academic program. And even when then it became an academic program in this part of the world, it was those people who are at the very tail end of retirement. So there was very little for them to do in terms of thinking, how am I contributing in terms of research and generating evidence? So this is one of the areas that we're really keen on working on. We are currently supporting a project that is developing an app, a mobile app, and part of that critical element, and I can see Beatrice is not in the room because I asked this question yesterday to the team, where is the portal where we were going to be putting forward a knowledge management system that brings to the fore some studies that have been done, interventions that have been implemented in this part of the world, that we can say, if I turn my patient every 2 hours, it doesn't make a difference with whether I turn them every 4 hours, so I don't need 10 nurses, 2 nurses would work. Something absurd like that. We need that, and we need to grow that. And I'm hopeful that as time goes by, as universities get on to lead nursing and midwifery education, that this is something that will come to the fore. I was very proud yesterday when we were doing our university assembly, and I could see the School of Nursing publications in this country, my School of Nursing, our School of Nursing, doing amazing work, because it means my team finally gets it. It gets that you have to do research, you have to publish, you have to try interventions, and you actually must generate evidence that helps us be able to provide care in this part of the world without reading how our blood pressure that's normal is 140, 90. Maybe that is why all of us are hypertensive in the room, because what is our normal in this part of the world? So that's the lens I wear, that's the heart, and I hope it's something we'll be able to push, even when I'll no longer be at Nursing Council. This is something that I'm very passionate for the School of Nursing, and I'm very happy to see that my team and I are doing what we need to do on that front. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. You have one. 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Thank you to any member of the panel. My question is basically speaking to the research that happened. To what extent does political correctness play a role in the leadership space, especially in the women leadership in the health sector, especially knowing that, for instance, the space of health in the devolved units of our governments, where somebody takes to a given point, in my assumption on political correctness, did it play a role in your study? Did it come out as something that could influence how the women get into the leadership roles? Thank you.
Political correctness. Wow. Yeah. Who wants to go? Me, I will not even try.
I think
half a minute each.
Yeah, political correctness. I'm still synthesizing what that means. yeah. But I hope you mean nepotism in some ways. Huh? Yeah.
Favoritism, some political affiliations. Like if I know Ruto, for some reason I have a name Ruto, and he becomes the president, then obviously then I'm being appointed to be somewhere. Does that play out in your study?
To some extent.
Tell us a little bit more.
I can't say for sure that there is data to show for it. You would definitely not find that data. But I think within the interviews, there's the implication that for some positions you would have to be seconded by someone.
Okay.
Yeah, in the system. I hope that helps.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's wonderful. Now, you are all not of the. There's one exercise. You've all watched Harry Potter movies, right? Yes? What's the most important element in the Harry Potter movies? The magic wand, all right? The magic wand. Now, here is my magic wand for you. If words were magic wands, I'm going slowly. So everyone is like, okay, what is coming next? If words were a magic wand, and you're to do your magic with one word to improve leadership of women in the health sector, what word would that be? Let's start with you, Sylvia.
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Just one word?
Just one word.
That's your word. If this word happens, it will guarantee gender parity, it will ensure women are empowered in the health sector, leadership. What that one word would be. Don't repeat what others have said. You have to say what is yours. One word.
Inclusion.
That has already been said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stewardship. I know I said that. Yeah.
Okay, stewardship. Martin?
Rule of law.
One word, that's a lot.
No. It's
one word.
It's one word.
Word as a word. Rule of law, that's three.
No, it's one. I will say respect.
Respect. Thank you. Prof?
I think I would still say voice.
Voice. Doc?
Legislation.
Legislation. My brother from Strathmore?
Supportive.
Support?
Supportive.
Supportive.
Yes.
So let's see if these words make any sense. So the audience started with what? The word inclusion, equality, equity, intentionality, and professionalism. The panelists are telling us what? Stewardship, respect, voice, legislation, and supportive. With those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, can we applaud our panelists? And thank you very much. Over to the Msema Chochote.
Thank you very much. Let's clap for them again. I'm pretty sure that you have sort of enjoyed the insights that have been brought up, right? Have you enjoyed them? A woman. It's now boring, yeah? Okay, fine. I won't repeat it. So we have a few guests online, and I would like them to give a word. More specifically, I would like to give an opportunity to Professor Sarah Hawkes to introduce herself and also give a sort of word or a remark to the work that has been done and what you've seen so far. So, Professor Sarah, can you hear me? She's on, so I'm just getting the projection up. Oh, sound. What sound is supposed to be? Okay, Prof, now we can see you, we can hear you. Please proceed.
I'm speaking at the end of a very, very long and intensive and enlightening day for you all. So I promise I won't take up too much of your time, but I did just want to share a few slides with you. But before I do, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Sarah Hawkes. I'm one of the co-CEOs and co-founders of Global Health 50, and Global Health 50/50 is one of the partners on the research that our colleagues.
Public health is a field dedicated to protecting and improving the health of all people. For too long, women have been underrepresented in leadership positions within the health sector, but that is all about to change. The Women in Leadership Project, a collaboration between the African Population and Health Research Centre, Global Health 50/50 UK, and the International Centre for Research on Women, India, is breaking down barriers.
Incredible work over the past couple of years, organising, being a very stimulating couple of days of dissemination and audience engagement. And I'm very sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person. I've been travelling and
even 5-6 We don't just look at the gender of leadership, we also look at nationality, and I just want to put this one slide up to show you what happens when you take a more intersectional lens to disaggregate. Rather than member state boards. So this is data relating to about 1,400 board members sitting on non-profit boards. So this is the NGOs, etc. And what we see is a huge disparity in terms of the voices and the representation of people from low and middle income countries compared to people from high-income countries, particularly the US and the UK. So even across this global sector, we are not seeing equality of opportunity in terms of nationality, in terms of who gets to sit on powerful powerful decision-making positions across the sector. So I want to move on in the final couple of minutes to talk about the question of accountability, because what we've heard and what you heard from the presentation on the Law Cube, for example, is it's not as if we lack policies and laws to make things better. Very few countries have a complete absence of commitments or laws to make things better. But what we don't see is the implementation and the holding to account for those political commitments or organisational commitments to equality. So as you saw from our data of 200 organisations, a huge rise in the commitments to gender equality, but very little in terms of the actual delivery of equality as an outcome measure. We see accountability, when we talk about accountability and we measure accountability in GH 50/50, we use human rights principles. Accountability involves independent monitoring, it involves transparency, the kind of thing I was just talking about in terms of data transparency, and it involves remedial action, something that we've heard again and again throughout the day. When organisations or employers are not meeting their commitments, what do any of us do about it? But accountability isn't just about monitoring, it's about power. It's about the politics and the power of holding the powerful to account. And as such, it's something that a lot of power holders resist, because we're shining a light on whether or not power holders are actually doing their jobs, whether they are actually abiding by their legal commitments to reach equality, for example. So accountability is a bit of a buzzword. Everybody talks about accountability. Remarkably difficult to achieve because it involves really, as I say, actually holding powerful people to account for what they're supposed to be doing rather than what they are doing. However, as you'll see in one of the papers in the BMJ collection, we've identified accountability systems that could be used to hold organisations to account for gender equality in the workforce at 3 levels. One is at the international level. So Kenya, like most other countries, has made commitments at the international level to gender equality, whether it's the commitments of CEDAW or whether it's the commitments of the SDGs. The Kenyan government, like my government and everybody else's government, has signed up to gender equality as a societal goal. And there are accountability mechanisms, including for equality in women's leadership, that could be better utilised to hold all of our governments to account for those commitments they've made, but are currently not being fully utilised, and I'll come back to that in a minute. At the national level, there are lots of state-led mechanisms for monitoring commitments to gender equality that are already in place, but are very, very rarely used by the health sector. So there's a real lack of coordination between people monitoring health accountability and people monitoring gender accountability, and the merging of the two. And the more that we can encourage organisations in the health sector to get involved in the accountability mechanisms for gender equality, the more power we will have to achieve our goals. And then there are measures that can be employed at the organisational level that all of us can employ within the workplaces where we're all based, both in terms of monitoring mechanisms and remedial action, and the kinds of partners that we can work with in order to achieve the commitments that organisations have made towards equality. So it's not just about leadership making a commitment, it's about staff demanding equality, it's about trade unions playing their part and demanding equality and holding employers to account. It's about staff associations supporting women to achieve their career goals. And it's about taking remedial action when those organisations that we all work for do not actually achieve what they've said that they are committed to doing. So the takeaway messages in terms of accountability is that we do lack some commitments. Every country lacks some commitments and lacks some laws and organisational policies for gender equality. But, in the main, we've got a whole bunch of commitments out there and a whole bunch of laws out there that could and should be put to better use in order to achieve goals of gender equality in the workforce. But right now, what we absolutely lack in most countries is accountability mechanisms to ensure that those commitments and laws are actually being held up or implemented and held up. We lack monitoring mechanisms. We lack data. We've heard a lot about evidence, but as you'll have seen from the reviews, there is a real dearth of transparent, publicly available data about the extent of gender inequalities in the workforce, and we genuinely lack mechanisms for remedial action. Conclusion from one of those BMJ papers is that there is a huge potential if we mobilise systems of accountability to achieve the goals of the commitments and goals of gender equality that we've all been talking about, not just for the past couple of days, but for the past many decades. But we need to better understand what those systems are and how we can play our own part in making sure that those accountability mechanisms are functioning in the way that they were designed. And I'm sure you've all been given a QR code already, but this is just one final slide to give you the QR code for where you can find not just the paper on accountability, but all of the other papers from the amazing work that colleagues in APHRC and ICRW have done and have brought to you over the past couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Prof. I believe we have enjoyed that enriching presentation. And so at this point, I'm looking at the time. I don't know if there's any burning insight that needs to be passed to Prof. Sarah based on the presentation. Any? Okay. We don't have any at the moment, but hopefully as we continue this engagement beyond this session, if there are any insights that come up, we'll be able to present them. So at this juncture, I would like to invite Mamadou to give the closing remarks as we bring this to a close. Thank you.
I did that. Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you. It's like Chris, we're looking at the time and then say, okay, there's time to close this meeting. So maybe just two reflections for me. I like doing my reflections on keywords. So two keywords. Oh, somebody should. Is it you? Yeah. So two keywords for me today is the first one is capacity. I think we talked about a lot about the capacity. Do women have the capacity to decide? Did they choose? Was it that they had no choice? Did they have the capacity in terms of not only the training? Do they have time to do the training? So capacity in terms of both the hard skills and the soft skills that I think in the presentation, Sally also referred to some of the soft skills, leadership, negotiation, communication. Those were brought up also in the panel. So I think that's important because for women to be there in leadership is not only about training them to have degrees. It's also, as somebody said, training them to be self-confident, to be able to communicate, to be able to negotiate. And that's not only women. I mean, research has shown that 70% of those who succeed professionally, 70% of success is linked to soft skills, not technical, 70%. Even in industries like automobile industry. That's shocking, right? So it's about your capacity to negotiate, to lead, to communicate, to build networks. So I think there is work to do there. We will take that upon. We had reflections from people from universities, how they are doing that, because there is one thing to say, okay, what are the critical skills that these women need to move? But there is another thing to say, how will they do that? Is it through mentoring? Is it through, in addition to mentorship, there are other ways to do that than just academic work? I think the second word for me is ecosystem. It's just, as I think somebody said it, is cross-sectoral, it's multi-layered. It's really something that you cannot just, it's not just a health sector issue. It's not just one layer. It's a multiple layer issue. So I think it's important to look at that. And for us, that's also a next step that we'll be happy to engage these key stakeholders in the ecosystem to say, okay, if we have to prioritize, maybe we cannot do everything, all the recommendations Dr. Silva presented. We might not be able to do all that. If we have to prioritize and get one or two, maybe one in terms of capacity, maybe one in terms of the enabling environment, the ecosystem, the laws, and or the enforcement, what will we decide? And that we should do it as key stakeholders on the ecosystem. Because I think the answer cannot be from just the health sector. Remember, I think 5 years ago, I had a presentation in my country, and I talked about how the health sector, how there is hierarchy and violence. And of course, 2 days later, I was invited by the Minister of Health just to say, no, you didn't understand. You should go to those who train these medical doctors. Do they train them to be respectful? Do they train them to not be violent? Do they? And then you should go to the Ministry of Jobs. What are the KPIs? What are the KPIs? What are some of the indicators they are using to evaluate? Is it about the soft skills, or is it about so on? So just to say, I think as a center, we work on research to policy. So research has done something, has brought a lot of evidence. So I think it's also now to say, how do we take this research to the policy area? How do we do that? And I think the next step for us will be to really continue this discussion with the key stakeholders in the ecosystem to say, okay, let's prioritize one or two concrete actions. How do we do that? Is there one example or two examples of capacity building that has worked that we can bring back? We can, again, ask our researchers to find out around that. What has been working in terms of capacity building, capacity development, and our policy team also do a political economy analysis to find out who are the key drivers. What is the power game playing around that? Because there is a power game, and that's why things are not necessarily moving. So what is it? How do we go about? Who are the key influencers and workers? So I think that's where we are at APHRC. We hope that we can count on you to continue this work. We will, of course, count on our research team to look at some of the areas that we will prioritize, to dig deep on some of them. And then we count on you as stakeholders to be part of this process, to engage with us and say, okay, let's do something that in a few years we can find that this is the change that has happened, so that we don't continue talking to ourselves. So thank you very much for coming again. I will let them do the vote of thanks, but for me, it's already fine. So thank you everybody for coming and for your valuable contributions, and we look forward to sharing the report with you, but also engaging more with you. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. So yeah, you're free. There are QR codes, just in case. There are QR codes on resources here. There's a QR code that Prof has shared. I think we'll get her slides later that we can be able to share that QR code. We'll get more resources on the work that you've done. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen.